Hey, and welcome to episode number 137 of The Brave Widow Show. In today's episode, I talk with Debra, and I think you're really going to enjoy her story. Before we jump into her story, I just want to remind you, if you are listening to this fairly real time, that I'm hosting a free webinar on Tuesday, February 11th at 11 a.m. Central Time. And it's called The Top 5 Dating Mistakes That Widows Make and What to Do Instead. So to sign up for that, you can go to bravewidow.com. If you want to catch the replay, go to bravewidow.com/love if you are watching or listening to this after the 11th. All right, let me introduce you to Debra. Debra is a young mama to a 1-year-old baby boy who lost her husband of 13 years to cancer. You can find her on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and we will include those links in the show notes. Let's go. Welcome to the Brave Widow Show, where we help widows find hope, heal their heart, and dream again for the future. I'm your host, Emily Tanner. After losing my husband of 20 years, I didn't know how I could ever experience true joy and excitement again for the future. I eventually learned how to create a life I love, and I've made it my mission to help other widows do the same. Join me in the Brave Widow membership community and get started today. Learn more at bravewidow.com. Debra, I know that our audience would love to know just more about you, more of your background, and then we can dive into your story just wherever you want to start.
Okay, that sounds good. So, my husband and I met when I was 23. I'm 35 now. We met when I was 23. I was in my last year of my master's program. I'm currently a teacher, 11 years in. And so I was doing my master's program in upstate New York, and really chilly night in November. I had gone out with a couple friends, and we were out at this local place in downtown Albany, New York, and we must have had mutual friends because everyone kind of knew each other except for us. And we got talking, saying, "Oh, this is weird. Like, we're the only ones who don't really know each other." And we were just talking the night. It went really good. And he had asked for my phone number, and he gave me his phone. And I put it in, it was Blackberries at that time. It was not an
Oh
iPhone or
no,
anything.
Blackberry. I love my Blackberry.
This was back in 2011. So it was early days for those iPhones.
No.
And I typed my phone number in his phone wrong.
Oh
Yeah, I accidentally messed up a digit, and I felt really confident leaving out that night. And the next 2 days, I didn't hear from him. And I thought that was really weird. So I was like, okay, whatever. And then he had reached out to his friend, who was mutual friends with my friend, asking. I've texted her, she hasn't answered. And that's where it all began. And he finally got the real phone number from me and texted me. And then we figured out that I gave him the wrong phone number, and it wasn't on purpose. And he just always said off the bat that, like, that was one of the telltale signs he knew, like, I was his forever, because I did silly things like that sometimes. So yeah, so we met in 2011, and then we were both originally from New York. We decided to pick up in 2013 and move down to Florida, Clearwater, Florida. I was in grad school at the time. I graduated, and I wasn't able to get a job up in New York. And he was like, "Let's go to Florida." And I said, "Okay, let's try it." And then we were like a year and a half in dating. My mom was so sad that I was leaving. She's like, "Are you sure you want to move all the way down to Florida?" But we did, and we were just so successful. And I found my first teaching job, and he was able to transfer his job at the time. And we started our new Southern life down here in Florida, which was a lot different than New York. And then in 2015, we adopted our fur baby, Apollo. And that's where my husband said he knew that I was definitely the one because of how I cared for Apollo.
no.
And we had got engaged probably 6 months after adopting him. So we got engaged in 2016. And then we got married in 2017, July 15th of 2017, back up in New York, because that's where all of our friends and family were from. And we did the thing. We bought a house down here in Clearwater, and we decided it was time to start our family. So we tried and we tried, and we were really struggling. And during the pandemic, we actually had a loss. I was about 10 weeks pregnant and I had a loss. And then we were like, maybe we should go see someone because we knew we wanted a family. It was one of the things that attracted us to each other when we first met. So we finally got to see a fertility specialist. We went through the whole IVF process. We ended up with one solid embryo, and that embryo stuck when we transferred him. And he's now 15 months old, a baby boy. But
Amazing.
yeah, so we finally got pregnant with our rainbow baby in November of 2022. November has been our month because we met in November of 2011. We found out we were pregnant in November of 2022. So November's just been like one of our months. So
Wow.
this month is already starting off to be a little tough because, it's November 5th now. And then we did our gender reveal for our friends and family in February of 2023 to let them know we were having a baby boy. And it was probably the week after that where my husband started to not feel great. He had suffered for about 10 years with ulcerative colitis, and he had had surgeries and things like that to help with it. And he was doing really well. He was gaining so much weight. He's one of those where he had no issues with weight gain or anything. So he was finally gaining muscle and he felt really good about himself. And then all of a sudden he didn't feel good. And he was one of the people to never really tell you how they were feeling. Like they tried to be strong, and he was all the way that until the very end. So in March, he was like, I think I have to go to the doctor. I'm not feeling well. My stomach hurts. And we knew he already had issues with that. So let's just go get checked out. Let's get cleared of everything, see what we can do. And he had test after test done probably for 3 weeks. We've never seen so many doctors before. And I was about 5 months pregnant. It was end of March when they had told us after biopsies that he was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. And just like saying that out loud, like gives me the goosebumps again, because I can bring myself back to that day of when we found that out. I had just come home from work and he knew that morning, but he always protected me from that kind of stuff. And he knew like it would just ruin my day. So he wanted me to make sure I was with my students and not having to worry about that till I got home. And he told me, and being 5 months pregnant after loss, after trying so hard to have this baby, that I just cried for probably 20 minutes. And then I stopped and I said to myself that I need to be strong for my boys. I need to carry this baby till first full term. So I need to make sure that I am keeping my stress level down. I was just scared of losing him. And on top of that, being the strength for my family at that time.
Mm.
And so we told our family all about the news. Stage 4 is scary, but we had a doctor down here. Our oncologist. He was very hopeful. He said, we caught it when we caught it. We immediately did this intense 2 weeks of radiation. Justin underwent 10 rounds of chemo. It was every other week.
What was going through your mind at that point of trying to wrap your mind around all of this?
It was definitely day by day, and it still is day by day. I knew that what I needed to do was to remain calm and positive on the outside, where on the inside, it felt like I was just being crushed and over again every day. My family, his family, we've never had any cancer. We went through IVF, so we already had gone through the process of testing our DNA, and there were no markers of that in my family or in Justin's family. So it was hard. It was like crushing every day. And every day I knew I woke up and I had to be strong. I had to physically be strong for him to see that, as I would cry and he would cry. And being together for, I think, 12 years at that point, it was a peak for us for sure. We've been through a lot of stuff together, him and I, family issues, moving across the country, and just all these issues. And this was just not something we saw for us.
Mm.
My husband was very much a person to tackle it and know that he needs to get through it. So every round of chemo, I could see just tore him down just a little bit more. And it was just so hard for me to see him like that. Being together for 12 years, you think you've seen it all until something like this happens and you just see your person in some other way. And I knew that I needed to be strong for us.
Mm.
I did. I put that at the forefront of my mind and I just knew it.
Yeah, and I fortunately have not had to be in that situation. And so, what I hear from people that have is that as a caregiver, it's just you feel so unseen. And it's really heavy
Mhm.
because, maybe rightfully so, all of the focus is on your spouse. And it's a lot of waiting and a lot of ups and downs. And you are wanting to make sure that they feel fully supported. And like you said, you're just crushed on the inside, or you just feel shattered. And that maybe it's isolating in a way to feel that you're
Yeah.
carrying that too.
Yeah, and I had said to a couple of my friends, my like really close family, everyone was like, "Oh my gosh, you're pregnant. Yay. Like we're so happy for you guys." And then I had to do all of this side by side with his cancer diagnosis. And in a way, I am not a selfish person like whatsoever. I am always give. But at that moment, I was like, "Thank you for asking about my husband, but I'm also now 7 months pregnant." And people looked past me a little bit
Mm.
into, because this huge thing was happening to us and to him. And I felt selfish in that moment, but at the same time my feelings were just as relevant as his feelings in it. And he never felt made me feel like that, but just in other, like trying to celebrate having my baby shower and things like that, it a lot of focus was like, how's your husband doing? When it's, but just focus on me right now. Let
One
me just
day.
have this one day. I've been waiting so long for it. And now it's finally here. So I'm glad you did bring that up because it did spark a memory a feeling that I had at the time of just, I wanted it to be like normal.
There was
And
that grief for what you thought that experience was always going to be like, and compounded
exactly.
by the previous loss that you had of, oh, we have it. Oh, now, maybe we can try again. And oh, we are pregnant. Now this is going to be amazing. And now we also have to navigate all these murky waters. And so there is even another element of grief of, this is supposed to be the happiest time of my life. And
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's how I felt. I'll get to when he had passed, but I feel like grieving starts prior to that. Like grieving doesn't necessarily have to be a death. Like I grieved this pregnancy and now I didn't get the full spotlight for it, which I'm okay with. It's just still a part of me that I'm like, oh, I can't believe that this is happening. Like just navigating that and those waters of we're celebrating, but I also have to make sure my baby shower is not on a chemo week because I don't want him to feel like not good physically when having to schedule that kind of stuff is not something that not everybody goes through. And I didn't really have anyone to talk to about that because I felt alone in that moment. And I know now being on this side of loss, it I know that I'm not alone. There is this entire community that has such similar stories. And it's now looking back on it, I stand by how I felt for sure, but I know that I'm not alone. And that's a good feeling in itself.
That's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So I had gestational diabetes. We had induction set. So again, having to schedule chemotherapy around my induction and clearing with our oncologist that is it okay if my husband doesn't have a round of chemo in for 4 weeks? Is that okay? Because I want him to be present once we do have the baby and be home with us and things like that. And Justin was doing good. His tumor had shrunk like tremendously. His blood work, his numbers, everything was so good. We were so hopeful for this. So then once I had the baby August 1st of 2024.
What? That's my
No
birthday.
way! Oh my gosh, it's the best day.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, August 1st. Alexander Joseph, we had
Oh,
him, and it was everything was great. I That was like my favorite day. We went in the day before because my blood pressure was elevated. So they're like, we're just gonna induce you now. It's not coming down. August 1st at 6:42 p.m. So we had our son, and his sister actually had recently told me that when he first was diagnosed, he didn't know if he was even going to be able to meet his son because I was only 5 months pregnant. We didn't know at the time, but the doctors were hopeful, and he was doing so well that in a full year later, they're like, okay, let's start talking about surgery because we want to remove it out of your body and get you in some sort of remission. You're young, you're healthy otherwise, other than the ulcerative colitis and the cancer. It did spread to his liver, which did qualify it for stage 4, but the liver lesions had pretty much gone away just with chemotherapy themselves. So surgery was then scheduled for June 21st of 2024. And we had an amazing surgeon. We had 4 surgeons on his case
wow.
that because of how intense tumor removal was and plastic surgery where the tumor was, and just it was a lot to navigate. It's a lot to navigate as a 35-year-old, just learning all that I've learned about cancer and the different stages and what doctors do what. Just I didn't anticipate having to learn this at such a young age. So that's been a huge part. I catch on to things very quickly, and just all the doctors we've seen over the past like 2 years with IVF and then now this, just navigating that, just not something I had anticipated. And that was where it started.
Right.
Just feeling this life that I had in my mind, and then it just going the opposite direction. But then giving so much hope from the surgeons and the doctors. So we had surgery June 21st of 2024. They said it would be about an 8 to 10 hour surgery. It happened to be a 14-hour surgery, one of the longest 14 hours of my life.
Had to be so nerve-wracking, just the extended time and
Yes,
waiting
and it's
and
so
waiting.
hard. I was there the whole time. It's so hard because I have this 10-month-old at home. Now that's a whole day that my 10-month-old I don't get to see. Thankfully, my mom is living here in Florida. She had moved down a couple months before we got pregnant. So it just like the timing with that really worked out. So being away from him is so hard through this journey because I have to split. I wish I could split myself in half and be with my husband for this 14-hour surgery, but also be at home with my son for the whole day. And that was a whole day that I didn't get to be with him. And Justin did really well in surgery. He pulled through. His blood pressure never batted an eye. He didn't bat an eye the entire surgery. That's what our colorectal surgeon had told us. Surgery went perfect. They got pretty much all of the tumor. The tumor had erupted prior to surgery. So They can't just gut out your insides. So she said, we got what we got. It's going to be an uphill battle, but we're going to be in front of it this time versus playing catch up. And she was so confident, and he did good. I saw him that night. I left him. He was out of it because of how much anesthesia he had. So the next day I went, he was in a lot of pain. His spinal tap didn't work. So they were trying to manage his pain otherwise, but everything was good. Everything was great until about 6 days after he developed a pneumonia. Where his surgery was, he had to lay flat on his back for a week straight and not really move because you didn't want to like mess up any of where the plastic surgery was and everything. And he developed a pneumonia because he wasn't exercising those lungs, and his right lung had collapsed. So they rushed him to ICU. So I'm like, okay, are we still good? Are we pulling out of this? And doctors were like, we may talk about a ventilator just in case, having to make all these decisions. Like I said, I just never imagined. I never imagined as much as I guess you can try to prepare yourself for it. There's no preparing yourself for this. Thinking about making those calls, because I'm a wife now. I'm not just the girlfriend, I'm the wife. And it's up to me. So we had conversations like that. If you were put on a ventilator, like what are your wishes? Because even being together for 12, almost 13 years, that's not really a conversation that you generally have. We've talked about it, but it's not something that we've had to go on in depth about. So he was in ICU for 12 days. Finally got back to the floor. His infection was pretty much gone. They started to do some physical therapy to get his legs moving, and because they say with a muscle, when you don't use it, you lose it. So he hadn't used his legs in almost 3 weeks, and his lower body. So he was having a lot of physical therapy, and he was doing good, and he was able to stand up on his own and walk to the chair and sit down on his own, just all that kind of stuff. And he was going to be discharged on Monday, July 8th. And Saturday morning, when I went there, because I went there every single day, at that point, I really was splitting my time. I would wake up in the morning, go to the hospital that was 30 minutes away, spend 5 or 6 hours there, go home, take care of my 10-month-old. It was exhausting. It was exhausting. And I kept saying to myself, because it had been almost a month at this point, is this ever gonna like, what's my new normal gonna look like? When Justin comes home, what's this gonna be like? I just can't wait to not have to drive to the hospital. And it was over summer. We had made sure it was over summer break, so I wasn't having to take off work or anything like that, because obviously he wasn't working. So it was summer. It was my summer break. I was out of school, but I was in the hospital every single day from June 21st to when they were going to discharge him. And that Saturday when I went, he was just off. There was something off about him. I know him the best. And I had said to the nurses, he's not acting like himself. He was a lot weaker standing up and getting to the chair. The left side of his face it was almost paralyzed in a way. And I'm like, how do you feel right now? And he was slurring his words. And I'm like, something's not right. I know him. You really have to be an advocate for those that you love, because not every place knows them like you do. And I was like, something's off. I know something's off. I'm like, you have to call a surgeon. So I called our doctor, who was a surgeon, and I said to her, I can't take him home like this. He can't lift himself up out of bed. I can't do it. I have a now 11-month-old running around the house. I can't do this. I don't know. And I don't want him to go to a nursing facility, because that's not good either. So I'm like, something's wrong. So I pushed and pushed. And finally, that Monday, she ordered a full body scan to see what's going on. His lungs were clear. Everything was good. It was that night, July 10th. I think it was a Tuesday or Wednesday. She had ordered the scan. They didn't do it till the next day. July 10th, I was eating dinner at my mom's because my mom had the baby most of the time because I was at the hospital. I would bring the baby to the hospital and do the best that I could. Those wake windows, we have to make sure he's home for a nap, or my night is hard and I'm by myself at night. And I see her phone number pop up on my phone, and I run to my bedroom at my mom's house and I answer it, and she said who she was. It was 5 p.m. We were just finishing dinner and she just had this tone. And I was like, oh gosh, just tell me. And she goes, the cancer has spread to his brain. And it was exactly what you thought. He has 7 lesions on his brain. They're not just in one area, they're spread out. So in that moment, trying not to get choked up here, but I am. It's like someone took his future and just snapped it in half. And I just felt like my entire world just shattered. And that's really the only way to describe it. It was I yelled for my mom. I said, Mom. She came running down the hallway. She knew something was wrong by the tone I had the doctor on speakerphone, and I apologized to her later because I just screamed. You screamed for your mom. And I did. I screamed for my mom, and she just came in and I was hysterically crying, and she knew, because we had been talking about what the possibilities were prior to getting the results. And the doctor then explained, she answered a lot of questions that I had and my mom had. And she didn't tell Justin at this point. So I was the first person she told. She said, I have to call his wife first. Like, she's the first person I have to tell. And God bless these doctors and stuff, because I don't know how they do that. How do you tell someone that? Because do you want to be the person to tell him? And I said, I can't, there's no way. So she told him, and then probably like an hour later, he had called me, and I had just said, again, being as strong as I could, we're going to do this together, no matter what it is. And we're gonna, as long as you want to fight, I'm fighting right by your side. So we had gone early to the hospital the next day. We talked about like the pros and cons. They started talking about palliative care, which is like what you do prior to hospice. Again, me learning all of these things that I didn't think I was going to have to learn so young. And we just had to have the most realist conversations. Was probably one of the hardest days, other than finding out about his cancer and having a loss of a baby and things like that. This was probably one of the hardest days as well, because you have those conversations with this person that you love. He was your other half. And I'm trying to be strong for him, as well as being realistic about it, because we very much were always realistic about things. And he said he wanted to do whatever he had to do. So we decided on just radiation, just to bring the swelling down. Because what was happening was, it was on parts of his brain that were his motor skills and movement. So if they were able to shrink that and have some physical therapy, he would then, we don't know how long they didn't put a number on it. I guess you say in movies, they're like, oh, you have 3 months to live. It's not really like that in real life.
Right.
They just said, we're going to do everything we can to just give him as much time as we can. We don't know what that looks like. So we did. He went on and he had his first day of radiation. They created this like almost hockey mask for him. They have to keep your head so still when they're in the radiation machine. And he ended up losing his hair, not something that he had with chemotherapy. He didn't lose his hair or anything like that, but he did with this radiation. So he started getting this radiation July. They moved him so fast up the line. Like, he had his scan. We met with the brain surgeon and then the radiologist, and the next day they had him in for radiation. Like, they were taking it so seriously, which is, in a way, I'm glad we didn't go home, because if we went home, it would have been call the doctor. Then you have to go this and get this scan, and then this happens, and this happened all within 3 days. So at that point, my journey, it took a turn. I thought we were going to have a lot more time, and he had his radiation. He had 10 rounds of radiation. And then he got into a physical therapy rehab, like it's a special rehab, and he wasn't making any progress there. And I could see he was trying his hardest, but it wasn't working.
Hmm.
And at some point, I had to have this conversation with myself of, we want him home, and whatever that looks like, we will make happen. If it gives us a day home, if it gives us a week or a month, like he wanted to come home. And so me having to make that decision and having that conversation with him, that we think it's best that he moved to hospice. Again, I keep saying it over and over again because it's just such an unrealistic thing I thought that I would have to be going through,
Yeah.
of hospice. We're supposed to be 80 or 90 when we talk about this, if that. Not, he was 41. He had just
Yeah,
turned 41 on August 21st.
it's just mind blowing to think about the age and having a new baby and then having to talk about hospice and lesions on the brain and just all of these things. Like it had to just feel so surreal and hard.
It does. It still feels surreal. It just, I can't believe I did it, even though it feels, was I even present, but I was making those decisions. I was doing the best that I could for our family and everything. And during this whole thing, so he had gone in June 21st, our dog that I mentioned that our dog earlier, because he's a pit bull, he's a blue nose pit bull, and he just developed this separation anxiety to where he was wrecking my walls. He wanted to, if I left him alone, he clawed at the wall and he exposed the drywall at one point.
Oh no.
And it was on my son's birthday, his first birthday. We came home from Build-A-Bear, and here he was, drywalls everywhere. He's going through it too. Animals go through it just as much. They just can't tell you. So here I am, grieving. Justin still had not passed away, but he wasn't home. So I've been alone since June 21st, and he was in the hospital having surgery, getting radiation, doing all the things. And then finally dealing with the dog's anxiety, dealing with my anxiety, dealing with an 11-month, now 1 year old at home, having my husband not physically be there for my son's first birthday. That's something I didn't think I'd have to go through. Just all these knockdowns that I kept feeling throughout this entire journey. And I'm still standing. It's just such a surreal feeling. So we moved him to hospice. So I took a half a day at school. I went home and get the baby, and we went and visited him for his 41st birthday, that he was at the physical therapy. August 21st is his birthday. And that's when we actually had to have that conversation about hospice. And he knew, he's like, my body's failing. I just know it. And I just want to come home. And I said, whatever we need to do to get you home, we're going to do it. So I called his doctor. We finagled all the things that you finagle to get him back into the hospital, to go to hospice, to come home. And Friday, August, he was brought to hospice, which was 2 minutes from our house. So it was nice. It was right around the corner. It was a Friday night. The next day, I went there. I spent a couple hours in hospice with him. He had just got there, so they had to get his pain regimen under control. And he was doing good. And I left him Saturday, August 24th, probably like 6:30. I said, I'll be back in the morning. Your caseworker will be here. We'll talk about getting the bed at home, things I have to do. Like I had to do like a little training to figure out how to administer his medication, things like that. And he texted me, I'm going to rest tonight. I said, okay. So I said goodnight to him. And the next day I woke up and I thought I had a stomach bug. And I said, something's off. Am I really sick? because I felt so nauseous. I was like, okay, I can't be pregnant. So I must have a stomach bug. That's definitely what it is. I was having like sweats and everything. And I had texted him and he wasn't answering. And I was like, that's just not like him. So I told the nurse that I was going to be there probably about 12:30 after my son's nap. Bring the baby. We'll spend a couple hours there. It's right around the corner from the house. So it's nice and easy to head home, put him down, and then go back. And took a shower while the baby was napping. And about 11:30, I saw the number for the hospice call me. And so I answered and she said, "Hey, Deborah, you're coming in today." And I said, "Yeah." She's, "Okay, what time?" And I was like, "Probably an hour." She's like, "All right, when you get here, we'll just talk a little bit." And I said, "You got to tell me now, because if my son's there, I'm not fully there because I'm worried about what he's getting into." She said, "Justin took a turn last night and he's been in and out of being conscious. He does wake up if we do wake him up, he opens his eyes. We want you to come in just as soon as you can." And his sister was flying in the following weekend. And I said, "Should I call? Is it time? Like, I need someone to tell me so I can handle this." And she said, "I would. Better sooner than later." I called my mom immediately. She wasn't going to go to hospice today. She was going to spend her Sunday at home cleaning because she was going to have to watch the baby for me the next day. And I call her immediately, and mother's intuition just knows. She picks up the phone. I don't even say anything. She's, "What's wrong?" It was like a normal phone call. I just called her. "What's wrong?" I said, "Justin's not doing great. I think we need to prepare ourselves. I need you to get there because I need help with the baby. I'm going to stay as long as it takes." And so we went and I saw the state that he was in, and he was just sleeping. And he actually heard my son coming down the hallway. And when we got to the room, he's, "Look who's here." Like, he woke up himself.
Wow.
And I knew he was still there. Again, I didn't know what to expect. I've never done this before. Even my grandfather had passed in his sleep, so I've never done this. I was younger. So I didn't know what to expect. And so we had like our little meeting with the nurse, and she just explained everything. And she just said, "It could be an hour, it can be a day, it could be a week. We just don't know." So I was able to talk with him, and we've already had those hard conversations. So it was really more of just, "I love you and it's okay." Because he never wanted my son and I to not be taken care of. He wouldn't leave not knowing that. My mom was there, which was so helpful. My stepdad was there, and my son was there in and out of the room. And that afternoon, we just spent together. I was holding his hand. He slept. He would wake up every time I would ask him a question, or I would say, "Are you still with me?" And he would squeeze my hand. He just was there. And I know it may not be like that for everybody. He was there and I knew he was there. And then spent the whole day with him. I brought the dog, and he like moved and grabbed the dog, and he knew our Apollo was there with him, and he said goodbye to him, and he was able to say goodbye. And we FaceTimed my brother and my sister-in-law and my niece. We're all very close. And he was able to FaceTime his sister. She was on a flight the next day, and she knew that it would have been too late, but she was coming down no matter what. And we FaceTimed her, and he was like, "I love you." And he was there. And then my mom said, "I'm gonna come back." It was like 6 o'clock-ish at this time, 6:15. My son was there. My son said goodbye, and he always scratched at my husband's beard. He loved like his beard hair. And my husband moved his face to Alexander's hand so that he could scratch his face. And I feel like that was their way of saying goodbye and I love you. And then my mom said, don't call me, Deborah, unless something happens. Because every time her phone went off, she would jump. So they had left, and I was holding Justin's hand. I told him I loved him and it's okay. And we're going to be okay. And I got this. And he looked at me and he took his last breath. And that was it.
Wow, what a beautiful gift, like way to be able to be
Yes.
there until the last moment. That's just really incredible.
Yeah. It has not made it easier because I don't feel like anything makes this journey easy, but it's like a just a feeling of happiness that I can have and hold that and relive that and be able to say goodbye and for him to know how much I loved him and still do every single day and how much he loved me and just having that. Not everybody gets that, and I feel so fortunate to have had that.
Mm. Yeah, and like you said, it doesn't diminish the hurt and the loss that you have, but to be able to just have that those moments and for him to be able to have said goodbye to some of the family members, it's just really incredible. What would you share just in these last few minutes that we have with people who maybe they're in that caregiving stage? I've had several widows on the show that they're even still pregnant while they're losing their spouse, that similar situation, or they're just in the very early days. Like, what has been the most helpful for you, or what encouragement would you give to those people?
I think giving yourself just all the amount of grace because and feel all the feelings because you're gonna feel them to take it in. I feel like that has really helped me to allow myself take 5 minutes and feel how I feel because I have my 15-month-old now that I'm strong for, but at the same time, I feel those feelings up and down all day. And I think really just giving yourself grace, and you've said it so many times, it's so important. And being able to get out those feelings, having that person or people that you can talk to and know you feel safe around because I am so blessed with the people that are in my life that I know that there's no judgment and they just let me talk and let me get out my feelings and they reassure me that it's okay to not be okay because you're not okay and I'm strong and I know that I'm strong, but at times it just hits you and to just soak it in. As much as you soak in and remember all those joyful times and all those happy memories with your spouse, soak in the grief too.
Hmm.
And I think that's really important.
Kudos to the people around you who are willing to just sit in it with you. Like that, I think is the most priceless, precious thing that we can do is through all the awkwardness and the tears and the guttural cries and all of that is just to have somebody that's, yeah, this sucks and I'm here with you. And
Exactly.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
taking it all in. So that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yes.
Deborah, thank you so much for so openly sharing your story and the beautiful memories and things that you were able to see through all of that. And I know that has to have been incredibly hard. And even as you think about the future that you have with your son and all of those moments that we know are going to come up, and you're going to think, his dad should be here to see
Yes.
that. That's not an easy journey, but it sounds like you are handling it really well and have a great mindset for, I get to embrace gratitude for the time we had together, the messiness of grief, and also realize my life isn't over. And
Mhm.
all of these things are true at the same time.
Yep, all at the same exact time. Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
If you're newly widowed and aren't sure where to start, you need the Brave New Widow Starter Kit. Inside Brave New Widow, you'll find a starter guide to help you through your first few months, a quick start guide you can share with family and friends so they know how to help you, and a collection of some of the frequent topics that widows want to learn more about. To get the Brave New Widow series, just go to bravewidow.com/start. It's free and you'll get instant access. That's bravewidow.com/start, START. See you there.